Hey guys, Nick Showman from Showtime Strength. Today what we're going to talk about is applying the conjugate method to a raw powerlifter. All right, and for the context of this conversation, because I think this is what most people are wondering about, is conjugate method meaning the West Side method, all right, the West Side version of the conjugate system. Um, as somebody that trained at West Side for 5, 6 years, somewhere in there, and I actually trained with many of my training partners were raw powerlifters. One of them being Chris Spiegel, who deadlifted 915 raw. My friend Aaron Walzer, who squatted 865 at 262 body weight with a near miss at 900. He bobbled it at the top. Burley Hawk, super heavyweight, he squatted 900, 905. All right, and these are all raw, just belt and wraps. But I think what we need to address first is the conjugate system has been around longer than supportive powerlifting equipment. I don't understand um, that misconception that it only works for equipped lifters or that something works different for one or the other when the system was designed at a time when there was no supportive equipment. All right. When Aaron and I trained together, we were really main training partners on Friday squat workouts. I was in equipment, he was raw. We used the same exercises, the same band tension, the same chain weight. Everything was the same, and really in the same time frame, our squat max went up the same amount. So, you know, you can say that, there's this or that, but really when it comes down to it, we didn't change anything. He box squatted, used accommodating resistance, all that. Right? So what we're going to talk about, what is the West Side system. You got max effort lower, max effort upper, dynamic effort lower, dynamic effort upper. All right, so those are your 4 base days. All right, and when you look at any lifter, regardless if they're wearing equipment or not, what do they need? Strength, speed, power, hypertrophy, some endurance. Believe it or not, once you get to the higher rankings of competing, to pull a third deadlift in a competition, which the higher you get, the more likely it's going to be that it might, winning or not winning the competition might come down to a third deadlift. That's where your endurance is going to kick in. Endurance, GPP. All right. These are 5 big points that don't change regardless of what the lifter is wearing or not wearing. And the point of the conjugate system is all of these are being simultaneously trained throughout the entire calendar year. All right, so that's the difference in a conjugate system and a block system or a linear system. We're not picking and choosing what traits we're improving, right? We're simultaneously improving all those on a weekly basis. All right, so knowing that we know this, all right, we'll just talk about a few things that people say don't work for raw or only work for gear. All right, box squat, again, I've seen it work. I don't know of a time other than competition that I ever saw Burley Hawk squat to a free squat. I would say that the box squat actually helped them save their hips, save their legs, and huge carryover, huge. All right, now, as you get closer to a competition, you might pull the box out, do 1 to 2, 3 week waves. If you're a beginner powerlifter, learn how to box squat and then spend more time actually working the skill of a free squat. But box squat's just going to build your hips up. All right, there's nothing about a box squat that's not going to carry over to a raw power lifter. All right, another one that we hear a lot of is that accommodating resistance only works with equipped lifters, doesn't work with raw lifters. Again, with Aaron, I think that was the biggest thing missing from his training we added some bands, and again, he was using the same band tension as I was, and his squat just skyrocketed. Um, with accommodating resistance, I think it's worth mentioning. You don't need a ton. Sometimes with accommodating resistance, less is more. All right, as you get up in the competitive ranks, sure, you can crank the band tension up, for a workout or two, and then pull it back off. Um, but I think for a raw lifter, it's actually just as important, if not more important, than a geared lifter, because you don't have the supportive equipment helping out of the bottom. So this is actually teaching you how to be fast. All right, so it's teaching your body to actually jumpstart that reversal strength. So we got box squat, accommodating resistance, specialty bars. I don't know why I don't know why people think specialty bars don't work for raw lifters. All specialty bars is a way to change the stress on your body. I think for a lot of raw lifters that are using, heavy benching, adding in a safety bar, adding in a camber bar is not only going to work on different weak points, but it's also going to increase your longevity in the sport as a competitor, because you're going to have less dings, less injuries. So I think those are some big points to, keep on. And then training volume, I think, is something that needs addressed. With training volume, the interesting thing is, so if you're wearing supportive equipment, your numbers are going to be higher. So that's going to reflect in the volume of your training. So when we talk volume, what we're talking about is work sets times reps times weight. So that's the total training volume. All right. So the volume of a raw lifter is not going to be as high as a geared lifter generally. But in the case of me and Aaron, or me and Burley, when we were training together, our squats were in the same ballpark. They were really, really close. So we were using the same percentages. So when you're using, when you're prescribing your percentages for your dynamic effort, dynamic lower, you have to remember that it's all numbers. All right. So if it's a 500-pound raw squat versus a 500-pound gear squat, it doesn't matter. It's still a 500-pound squat in terms of training. All right. So for a raw lifter, I think something that needs said: belt, knee revs, shot. All right, so for a raw lifter, just remember if you're using any supportive equipment, that's going to be a stress on the body. You're going to be able to handle more weight. Even a weight belt, people don't realize, by adding a belt around your waist, you're now helping the body lift more. And I'm not by any means saying that belts shouldn't be used. I'm just saying you're going to lift more because you're recruiting more core muscles when you wear one. So in theory, that's an overload. Knee wraps, again, I know people that get 50 to 60 pounds just out of a set of knee wraps. So these things can be training tools for a raw lifter in a conjugate plan to get an overload. All right, same thing, slingshot and a loose set of briefs. With these things, obviously I would pull those out. Let's say if you're getting ready for competition, I would start pulling those out so your movement is the exact same motion. You're used to feeling things lock up at a certain point. I knew when I was competing in equipped powerlifting, I could tell where I was depth-wise on my squat or my bench press just by the way the gear was feeling on my hips, on my legs, all that stuff. So if you're a raw lifter and you want to use the slingshot for an overload on your bench, or a loose set of briefs for some off-season training just to handle heavier weights, build extra muscle, that's fine. Just pull them out as you get closer to a meet. All right, so again, these are all tools that can be used, even wrist straps. You could go 4 weeks without wrist wraps, or just use wrist wraps year round. It doesn't matter. All right. But use every tool at your disposal. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below, or feel free to email me, Nick at Showtime